Ladies and gentlemen, praise the sun! Today we are looking at Kael'thas, the newest hero in Heroes of the Storm. I say hero, I suppose that's not exactly true, but you know, hey, it's the term used for Heroes of the Storm. So yes, today Kael'thas Sunstrider comes into Heroes of the Storm as a mage, a wonderful mage with high-end burst potential. So we'll be taking a look at all of his abilities and talents. So first and foremost, let's take a look at Kael'thas and his skins.
Greetings, warrior.
So this is Kael'thas, the Sun's King, and I'd like to also show off that you can see that there's been some updates to the shop here as far as the display for what the heroes have as abilities. I think it looks much nicer. So start off, we'll look at Kael'thas' standard skin. He's actually got some pretty nice detail here, and he does open and close his cape as he performs his animations. So you can't really see much of the armor from here, but we can take a look at some of the colors. This is his master skin.
Time. Join me in battle.
An interesting point of note is that the colors are mostly the same as far as his master skin and regular skin, which most of the master skins actually have a different color scheme. They're just slightly reversed. Like in the master skin, the second one is kind of the deep crimson red, whereas the normal one, the last one is. Finally, he has this Stormpunk Kael'thas skin, which is actually quite nice. It doesn't come with any enhanced voice clips or new art for abilities, other than the mechanical spheres actually have a different animation when you proc some of his abilities, but that's about it. But it still looks pretty nice. Alright, so before I get started here with his abilities and all that, I wanted to apologize for getting this out to you late. I'm pretty sure this is going to get out to you fairly late, as unfortunately the way of things is the heroes come out usually on a Tuesday. I spend all of Tuesday, if I can, it's one of my days off, exploring the hero, and I'll usually do a live stream when I do that, in order to test them out, find out their abilities, so they can come back informed to show off all the talents in here and what I found as far as how they work and how they synergize. And unfortunately, the next day on Wednesday is I work, and I work long hours, unfortunately, and it pretty much means for the next 3 or 4 days I'm not going to be able to get anything out. So that's kind of why you're going to see this a bit late.
Very good.
But let's go ahead and move on. This is Kael'thas. As you can see, he's got standard mount mechanics. Now, I suppose we should start off with Kael'thas' trait, because this will affect absolutely everything you do as Kael'thas. This is the Verdant Spheres. It is a 6-second activatable ability. It makes your next basic ability more powerful. It's completely free every 6 seconds. Because of the 6-second cooldown, though, it makes sure that you can really only empower one ability in a short period of time. Every single one of the abilities has something that they do when you activate the Verdant Spheres, and you will always know they're active because you actually get a nice animation. You hit it, and your orbs become active and start surrounding you, and then when you use one of your abilities,
Outstanding.
the orbs go away until the 6 seconds pass. You can actually see the orbs form one at a time to count down the 6 seconds. So Kael'thas, again, mage, kind of like Jaina. He is, I dare say, a little less bursty than Jaina, but I like him a little bit more. He doesn't have quite the survivability of Jaina, but even though he doesn't quite do amazing instant burst, he has a lot of AoE potential burst. So Jaina can usually nuke down a person within a few casts, and she has shorter cast times than Kael'thas. Kael'thas has longer cooldowns, but he can just put out this really nice just quick snapshot of burst, and it can spread. And you'll see what I mean as we go through the abilities. And what I mean, and when I say he doesn't have as much survivability as Jaina, that's twofold. One, Jaina has the slows because she's an ice mage. Kael'thas, being a fire mage, doesn't have that, but he also lacks the sprint talent that Jaina has. But he does have some ways to survive, and we'll talk about those as we go forward into talents. So the first ability on your bar is Flame Strike. It has a 7-second cooldown, it's a short delay, and then does a moderate amount of damage, 94 in this instance. So we'll go ahead and use it. This is the Q. You can see it's got a pretty nice range to it, actually. If we were to go to our measure in bushes, we can take a look and see it goes quite all the way out. You can see it shows the circle. It's a fairly short delay. but enough time for an enemy to walk out of it. So you usually have to predict them or get them in the middle or trap them in it somehow. And you can see the fire spin around to indicate when it's about to come up. If you activate it with the Verdant Spheres, you increase the radius by 50% and the damage by about 50%. Looking at the numbers, I'm pretty sure it's roughly 50%. So we'll activate the spheres, and we can see that the radius is much bigger. So this will be one way that you can trick enemies in getting into it. This is also an excellent source of lane clearance. In the beginning, it doesn't clear the lanes very well, but that's pretty much almost every character, because the beginning of the game is you're meant to be a bit weaker, and it's going to take longer. But when you get towards the end of a game, you'll start clearing minions like crazy if you activate the Verdant Spheres and then put down a Flame Strike. So the next ability I'm going to need some minions for, and this is Living Bomb. Living Bomb is a targeted spell. I can't just cast it out into the open. It's one of my favorite spells, and it brings back wonderful memories of World of Warcraft when I was a fire mage. Here I am at level 20. I've brought the level up, so if you want to see what Flame Strike is, it's 474, and it goes up to 711 when you activate the spheres. And here we have Living Bomb, which is 420. So you can see that immediately the 3-second burn time on Living Bomb is equal to Flame Strike, but it also has the explosion. So it's 420 over 3, and then they explode for 210 damage to all nearby enemies. Casting a second Living Bomb on the enemy causes the previous Living Bomb to explode immediately. And you might be wondering, well, you can't really do that with a 10-second cooldown, right? I can put the Living Bomb on Arthas here, and you can see there he goes, he burns, and it's quite a nice effect on it. You can cast it on minions, you can cast it on heroes, and yes, you can even cast it on buildings if you want to watch a building smolder. And you'll see that it even gives the green bar of a dot, so enemies will see how much damage they're taking. But the big part about it is the explosion and doing the additional damage around him. And this is why Kael'thas has some very nice burst potential for a group. Because you can activate Verdant Spheres, and you make this ability cost no mana, but also have no cooldown. So this is really great in the fact that it helps Kael'thas in a sustainable laning phase, because every 6 seconds you'll get a free Living Bomb, or every 10 seconds because it's got a 10-second cooldown. But you activate the spheres, it doesn't enhance the damage at all, it just pops out. There it is. I got it for free. And then because it has no cooldown, I can pop it again immediately without having to wait. But the benefit of that, of course, is as it says, you can cast the second one to cause them to explode immediately. So I can trigger 210 damage instantly. So if I hit the spheres, I hit him with the bomb, and then I can hit him again to cause it to explode. Now that's great for burst. Oh, accidentally reset everything. It's great for burst. As you can see here, if I put it down on him, you get a decent amount of damage, plus he still ticks. But if you really want to maximize what you're going to get out of Living Bomb, is you probably want to let it tick and explode. Give it the 3 seconds, let it explode, then reapply it. Because the biggest source of damage from Living Bomb is the tick. However, and this will really change based on what talents you get. With the right talents, you won't want to wait, because you can actually have Living Bomb spread. So this is going to be one of those strategic elements where, okay, do you decide to put it down and wait it out in order to get maximum long-term damage, like so? Or do you actually trigger it early in order to get the explosion damage? If they're running away from you like so, you might want to get the explosion off as quickly as possible before you lose the chance to do so. And again, we'll talk about some of the talents which will really change up your strategy. Your last ability is Gravity Lapse. It's a skill shot, as you can see. It has 13-second cooldown. It doesn't do damage, but it's a stun for 1.5 seconds. And we'll go ahead and put it out there, and you can see it. There it is, kind of a tornado. And not only is it a stun, but it's got that visual effect that they get knocked into the air. Now, that is kind of important, though, because the knock into the air does visually displace them, meaning that you will also have to make sure you click on them properly. For example, if I want to trigger Living Bomb, you'll notice if I put him in the air, I can't trigger a Living Bomb on him while he's in the air because my mouse click was too low. So you have to make sure you compensate for that when you knock him in the air. That is one way to get a Flame Strike in. Knock him in the air with Gravity Lapse, put a Flame Strike underneath them. If you activate your Verdant Spheres, Gravity Lapse will then stun the first 3 hostiles. This is great for people that like to hide behind their minions. So I could come up here and I could fire it off and hit the 2 minions. I missed Arthas, but you can see the potential there. I can hit the 2 minions and still get Arthas with the Gravity Lapse. You can also use it in a team fight to stun 3 people. It's quite useful. Although you have to make the decision of doing the stun on 3 people or getting a massive amount of AoE burst. Depending, again, how you build, that'll really affect the decisions you make. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the ultimates. He has got some very powerful ultimates, and the beautiful thing about Kael'thas is they are both on very short cooldowns. In fact, if there's anything overpowered about Kael'thas, it will probably be his ultimates. A lot of his abilities feel very balanced so far. The only thing I can really see is that the short cooldown and combined with the high damage that he can do with his ultimates can seem a bit off. The thing is there's some setup time required, and Kael'thas is also quite squishy. So let me show you the first one. We're going to do Phoenix first. We're going to do Phoenix first because I like the second one is amazing, and it deserves to be put last. So Phoenix, 40-second cooldown. You launch a Phoenix to an area, and you do 170 damage to enemies along the way. The Phoenix will persist for 7 seconds and attack enemies for 170 damage, and it does splash damage for 50%. And you can see it's got a pretty nice area, and you can see the distance. So if I make sure I target it right, it will do damage to him as it flies out. Then it will sit there and continually do damage to its target. Now you'll notice it doesn't damage everything inside of its radius. It does splash damage, as it says. Everything the Phoenix attacks is going to do an AoE damage to it. So again, Kael'thas shows that he's a master of AoE damage burst. Let's just clear the cooldowns again. It can be an excellent way to deny an area. You can see it focuses on heroes first, so if you need to push it out, if you need to guard an objective, this is the ultimate you really need. This is something that will stop enemies from doing things like turning in coins in Blackheart's Bay, or maybe even capturing the Dragon Knight. You can make sure that you've got at least a 7-second denial in a large area so the enemies can't get near. Plus the damage is actually pretty nice. The short cooldown means you're just going to have it very frequently. And you can see it'll focus minions before it focuses a building. And see, it will focus buildings after all the minions are dead. So it acts a little bit like a tower in that regard. It's got what appears to be the same type of AI. Very nice. So the ultimate modifier to Rebirth to Phoenix is Rebirth. Obviously very thematic there. The Phoenix's duration is improved by 100%, and you can order the Phoenix to move to a different location once while the Phoenix is alive. So that's the important thing. You can move it, but you can only move it once. And the important thing to that too is it has to be within range of Kael'thas. It doesn't have to be within range of the actual Phoenix. The beautiful thing about that is it allows the Phoenix to move twice, which means you can get that 170 initial damage twice if you do it right, or if you put the Phoenix down and the enemies decide to move out of it, like we'll just go ahead and put it here. We'll try and hit him with it too. So there we go. We hit it with it, and he's moving out, so we're just going to go ahead and move the Phoenix, but I have to get into range to do so. There we go. And there it is. The Phoenix has moved to its new location. So the Phoenix is a very, very useful tool for zone denial. Especially at 20, because then you can just move it, and the fact that it lasts twice as long is even more fantastic. It is honestly a great ultimate. It's one of those things where both of his ultimates are actually very good. Let's look at the one that might be considered a little bit overpowered. Alright, the other ultimate you get at level 10 is Pyroblast. Remember when I said he wasn't quite as bursty as Jaina? I kind of lied. It really depends on which ultimate you get. He can be a little bit more bursty than Jaina, but of course he requires this ultimate to do it. The rest of his abilities, while they are quite nice and can do quite a bit of damage, as you see, they're mostly for around doing area damage. Flame Strike strikes in an area. Living Bomb is all about getting that damage at the end, and it does have a dot component, so he doesn't do a lot of the upfront right away damage, but you can see the potential there. Pyroblast changes all that. It is on a 50-second cooldown, less than a minute. After 2 seconds, you cast a slow-moving fireball. And here at level 20, it does 1,600 damage to an enemy hero and 800 damage to enemies nearby. So it's got a splash component as well. This is essentially a very slow-moving triple tap. He can snipe an opponent much like Nova can. It takes him longer to set it up, and it's easier to get out of than triple tap, quite honestly. It comes with caveats. So let's consider triple tap for Nova, right? she triggers her triple tap. You can't outrun it. You can't get away from it. But triple tap will avoid, or sorry, will not avoid, but will collide with walls and towers. So if Nova fires a triple tap at you, one of the surefire ways to get out of it is to get behind a building to stop it, or another hero can intercept it. Pyroblast does not have that limitation. So let me see if I can get Kael'thas to back off here, so I can show you just what this is capable of. I'm going to hopefully make him run away. So I'm going to fire it off, and you can see it's a long cast. There it is. It slowly follows him. It doesn't trigger on anything other than its target. But you can see the damage it does as well. If I clear the cooldowns, and I wait for Kael'thas to come back, I'm just going to hit him with it right away. There you go. That's a nice chunk of damage when you consider that Kael'thas right now is a tank. A very tanky tank. So that's a good amount of damage. A squishy character, such as your assassins, your supports, and some specialists, are not really going to live through that. That is over half of my health, or right about half, actually, it looks like. That is half of my health right there in one cast. So you can see why it might be considered a little overpowered, considering it comes back in 50 seconds. That is not a long time at all. Most of these ultimates that do such a high amount of damage are like 90 seconds. Here's the trick to Pyroblast, should you find yourself on the opposite end of it. As I mentioned, it's very slow. But Kael'thas can be interrupted. As you'll notice, I can even interrupt myself by moving. So if I try to cast it and I have to move, it will cancel the attack. But that also means that Kael'thas is not immune to stuns when he's casting it. So if he goes to cast this Pyroblast, he can be stunned, and you can stop it. The other way out is you'll notice there's a white ring around me now. Every time I cast, that white ring will show up. I don't know if it shows up to opponents, I'll be quite honest. But the idea here is to know that at the edge of his cast, like, let me show the actual edge. And you can see, there it is. I'm going to get him in my edge. There we go. There's the edge of my cast range. And it's not that far off from that white ring. If Kael'thas gets to that white ring before I finish casting, the cast won't go off. It's also very slow moving. So there is a chance for you to get to allies for help. Now, you don't want to stand right next to him because it will do splash damage, but you can possibly be shielded by, say, a Tassadar. He could put a shield on you to stop you from getting hit. You might be able to get healed before it hits. So it is counterable because it's so slow. You can respond to it. You can't run away from it, but you can try and mitigate its damage as much as possible. If you're a fairly quick character, maybe you've got a teleport, you might be able to blink away and get some distance between you and party members if you know it's heading your way as well. And toggle these minions off. So there are ways around it. It just hits really hard. And if you don't see it coming, it can mean death. Once that fireball is out there, and if you don't have any allies to get to that can save you, you're probably going to die. It is slow enough, though, that if you're fighting at the core, I mean, you can very easily see it coming, and you can get to your core shield before it hits. So there are ways around it. It's just what really makes it powerful is that fairly low cooldown. And I say it's got a fairly low cooldown, it gets lower.
Choose a talent.
At level 20, you get Presence of Mind to modify Pyroblast. It increases the explosion radius by 50%, and it reduces the cooldown by 10 seconds per enemy hit. Enemy hero hit, not minions. It's already at a 50-second cooldown. That means you're guaranteed 10 seconds off, so this will be a 40-second cooldown. The only way you're not going to get that cooldown is if the enemy dies before you hit them. Kind of like Triple Tap's instant reload feature. This is much the same. It has to hit to get that 10-second cooldown. But if you cast it in a team fight, and you imagine you get all 5 of them there, what happens if you hit a team of 5? Well, that means you're going to get an instant cast, or not instant cast, but you're going to instantly get the cooldown back on Pyroblast if you get all 5 of the enemy team in the explosion radius. Now let's take a look at the explosion radius now that it's been improved. Now you can't hit towers, by the way. You also can't target minions. It has to be a hero that you target with this. So let's hit him. And you can see the expanding, I'll just show it again. You can see the expanding ring around Arthas. That's another visual clue, and I do know that enemies see that you are being targeted by Kael'thas. So if you see an expanding ring around your feet, you're about to get hit by Pyroblast. And you can just see how large it gets. It actually has a very large hit radius when you put in Presence of Mind.
Very good.
And look at that, it's already down to 30 seconds because of the reduced cooldown. It is very powerful, and you can definitely burst down someone very quickly if you combine it with your abilities. So we clear my cooldowns, and we'll just say I'll put him in the air, put that, spheres, living bomb, and pyro. And there we go, one dead Arthas.
This was child's play.
Truly powerful. I've been having a lot of fun with him. I enjoy Jaina lately because they gave her a bit of a damage buff. I enjoyed her before, but she did feel a little bit vulnerable. Now that they've improved her damage, she feels like her vulnerability matches her potential. Kael'thas has a lot of vulnerability as well, but his damage is already pretty much up there where it needs to be, and his denial, his zone denial, is very potent.
Indeed.
Even if you don't go for the pure damage, the AoE boom specs. So let's take a look at your passives, or your tier 1 talents. The first is Mana Addict. This is a passive. It's an interesting spin on the Conjurer's Pursuit type talents, where you would collect globes in order to gain more regeneration. In this case, instead of getting regeneration, you increase your maximum mana by 15 every time you pick up a regeneration globe. And that does not increase, it's always 15. It gives you that 15 with every globe, though, unlike the Pursuit, which requires you to get about 4 globes, I think, to get a certain percentage. So you're always getting maximum mana. And this can be nice because it means you can stay out a bit longer, because Kael'thas can be quite mana hungry when he's out there and aiming to do maximum damage. You'll be out there casting quite a bit, and you'll lose the mana. But really, when you go out and you burst, you're usually going to be doing kind of hit and run with him because you don't want to be vulnerable with your cooldowns down. So I find that his mana consumption, while it can be kind of high, it doesn't necessarily need Mana Addict. This is actually a talent I would combine with, and I'll just talk about it now, with here at rank 16, and that's Arcane Barrier. That's really the only thing that synergizes with this, and probably the only reason I would ever take Mana Addict. If you're going to consider getting Arcane Barrier, you want to get Mana Addict. It's just really my recommendation there. If you're not going to get it, I would probably avoid Mana Addict. There's really no reason to pick this up because some of the others are a bit better. So let me talk about this now, and we can skip it later because I think it's very important to know this synergy. This is a 45-second cooldown. Kael'thas' cooldowns are relatively short. Not as short as, say, Jaina's, especially since she can get Ice Lance and get 2-second casts, but still relatively short, especially with his burst potential and his AoE potential. This activates a shield that's equal to 200% of your maximum mana for 3 seconds. As of right now, my maximum mana is at 500. Getting 200% of that, that's 1,000. That's more shield than I have health. Now, at higher levels, and we'll just go ahead and level up to show this, it's not quite the same. Mana goes up much more slowly than health does. So if we get to in-game, and we go up to level 20 to take a look at what Arcane Barrier would give us, we can see that I'm at 690, so let's say roughly 700 mana. So that would give me 1,400, about half of my health and shields. By the time you get to level 20, though, and you've collected enough globes, and you want to be fairly diligent about that, you can have a shield that will be more than, probably about 60 to 70% of your health. If you're fighting an enemy Nova or Kael'thas and you're concerned about getting bursted down because, let's face it, your health pool is fairly tiny as a Kael'thas, this is one way to get out of it. That shield will save your bacon. It is an excellent survivability talent for Kael'thas, and really his only real escape. The only other option he has to escape is usually Gravity Lapse, and that's on a 13-second cooldown, so that's something you got to keep in mind. So Arcane Barrier is a good second. Convection is a fairly nice talent if you're going for the burst. This is Flame Strike deals 20% bonus damage to enemies who are stunned by Gravity Lapse. So as I showed you the combo earlier, you put them up in Gravity Lapse, and then you put a Flame Strike under their feet so they can't get out of it. So it's especially useful if you often use Verdant Spheres to trigger your Gravity Lapse. So, because if you can use your Verdant Spheres to trigger a larger Flame Strike, which may be easier to hit with than trying to hit them with two abilities, such as getting the lapse and then the Flame Strike up. And it's a much easier shot to make, because having to quickly cast Lapse into Flame Strike, because Gravity Lapse doesn't last that long. You have to pretty much put the Flame Strike under their feet immediately, with the timing being so short. It's definitely doable. But you might be better off getting the extended range on Flame Strike. But if you're going to use Verdant Spheres with your Gravity Lapse, then having Convection can be helpful with that. So Energy Royal is the next one. This is Gravity Lapse's cooldown is reduced by 3 seconds for each enemy hit. That means if you hit with it, it's a 10-second cooldown. If you use the Verdant Spheres, it's 9 seconds taken off, so you're looking at about 4 seconds. So Energy Royal can really help you continually get these out. If you're looking to be maybe a bit more of a supporty Kael'thas, that is possible to do, because you can just get a 3-person stun is pretty hefty, especially if your team is heavy on burst. And you can be the one person to help your team really take 3 guys out of the fight and very quickly burst them down. The last option at level 1 is Felon Fusion. You heal here at level 20, 206 health when you activate Verdant Spheres. So this can be quite a nice sustained thing. I mentioned before, every 6 seconds you can cast this. So every 6 seconds you're getting 206 health, which less than 10%, but still a good amount considering, again, 6 seconds. Very high sustainability. You can lane by every 6 seconds casting Spheres, casting Living Bomb, and it will cost you no mana.
A fine choice.
So we'll put out the minions real quick. We'll do Spheres, Bomb. And we wait for it. Spheres, Bomb. And this is at level 20, so obviously they're dying fast. But you can see that, again, it took absolutely no mana on my part. Took absolutely no energy. And if you're getting pinged a little bit, it can be nice to have the healing. This is a really tough tier, quite honestly. I really feel like his survivability is low enough that I would probably go with the Mana Addict and Arcane Barrier, but if you find something else at level 16 that you like, you'd probably want to figure out what your playstyle is. Convection is nice. 20% bonus damage can be nice if you can land the Lapse Flame Strike combo. If you can't, maybe go for Royal. Felon Fusion is nice, but again, it's kind of a small heal, and you're so squishy as Kael'thas that having a minor sustain in the form of healing may not really pay off in the long run.
Choose a talent.
So looking at level 4, we have Mana Tap. I don't really care for this one. Flame Strike restores 20 mana per enemy killed. That can be useful. At later levels with your Verdant Spheres, you can kill practically an entire line. You're guaranteed to kill the archers and the mage at later levels. So you're looking at what, 2, 4, 6, 8, 80 mana maybe? So that's not terrible. I mean, that is 10 more mana than the cost of Flame Strike. So yeah, it's nice and it helps with sustainability, but early game it's not entirely easy to kill minions with Flame Strike. It comes more later. You have to get them down to about half, maybe put down Living Bomb first, then Flame Strike. That can be kind of useful, but I don't think the mana return is really all that great. And again, there's other options. I mean, you could get the maximum mana again, and that might be more helpful. The other abilities this tier are much better. Let's just go get it out of the way now. There's Envenom. Again, it's a talent I don't care for, and wonderfully enough, I think there's a good decision on this tier. Envenom coupled with Gathering Power. This seems like probably the one answer to the Envenom quandary that I've seen. I don't care for Envenom, but if you're going to make me choose Envenom over Gathering Power, that's not a bad choice, because we're looking at damage on an ability versus additional damage on my abilities. So Gathering Power allows me to gain 5% ability power. Each hero takedown gives you 2% bonus up to a maximum of 15. So you get a total of I believe 20% on that, because you start with 5 and then you get 15 more. Oh no, I'm sorry, I believe it's just 15 total, but still even then, 15% additional damage on your abilities is quite massive, especially since he does such high-end AoE burst. So really, I think it's a much better comparison, especially since Kael'thas does all of his damage, does a nice amount of damage with his abilities. It seems to be a better option than Envenom. And again, a better option than Mana Tap. Like these two alone, to me, are a much better option than Mana Tap. Nether Wind is an interesting option here. This increases the range and speed by 30% of Nether Lap. So you'll take a look. There it is. It's not really that quick. It goes out to about the end of this bush here. I mean, you can certainly hit with it. It's not bad. It's not slow. But compare it with Nether Wind, which, as you can see, goes out quite a bit further and is now much faster. You would think that something like this wouldn't be a contender for a tier that has such high damage increasing capabilities, but that really can help. Keeps enemies from escaping, allows you to set up kills from much farther away, and it is a much better team fight option because, let's face it, when you're in a good stun and burst team combo, any little stun can offset the balance because then your team just focuses on that person and they die. It's a very viable choice, I think, especially because it's got the range and the additional speed is just icing on the cake. We go at level 7, and he's got Clairvoyant, so he's got a generic talent here in that. It's activate to reveal an area for 10 seconds. Cloaked enemies in the area are revealed. It's 45-second cooldown. Tri-Optimal reduces your cooldown of Verdant Spheres by 2 seconds for each target hit with Gravity Lapse. So Verdant Spheres is already pretty short, 6 seconds. Reducing it by 2 for each enemy hit, that means if you use Verdant Spheres prior to Gravity Lapse, or maybe you use Verdant Spheres on something else, it allows you to shave off 2 seconds, so it means you're only waiting 4 seconds. But if you use Verdant Spheres, combine it with Gravity Lapse, and you hit 3 enemies, that is 6 seconds off. 6 seconds. That means if you frequently use Verdant Spheres on your Gravity Lapse, this is a talent you want to look at because it will enable you to trigger your Verdant Spheres a second time very quickly. If you manage to clear the cooldown completely and hit an enemy, that means you can Verdant Spheres right into a Living Bomb and do a Living Bomb burst combo. Exceptionally useful if you're good with using the Gravity Lapse. There's Sunfire Enchantment. This activating Verdant Spheres causes your next basic to use a spell, basically a unique spell. It's basically follow through. Instead of every ability increases your basic attack, in this case it's only Verdant Spheres. But it's a good amount of damage. And we're looking here at level 20, it's about 400 damage. If we look at his other abilities, that's about the damage of a Flame Strike or a Living Bomb Tick practically. That can be quite a bit, and considering that he doesn't have a third ability to do damage, you do this right, it can be quite useful. I personally think that Fusion Bomb or Tri-Optimal are better choices than Sunfire Enchantment, but the damage it does can't really be underestimated. I mean, if I go over here, I'm going to go ahead and pick it right now to show it off. I mean, his basic attacks, you can see 191. Activate the spheres. And I don't believe there's a timer on it. Let's just try it. There it is, 398. So there's no timer on it. So unlike Follow Through, which has a timer. You have to use it within a few moments, I do believe. This doesn't. Now the thing is I can't get it again until I use a spell. So I have to cast a spell, get the cooldown going. Let's go ahead and clear it. But then I can trigger it any time, and then the next time I run into an enemy, I've got a basic attack ready to go, and they might not be expecting it to do as much damage as it does. So I go in, boom, 398. And you can see he actually casts a different spell with a little bit of an effect, like a greenish effect on it. The last option here at level 7 is Fission Bomb, and I like this one. It increases the Living Bomb explosion damage by 75%. That's a lot. I mean, it practically brings the explosion up to the same level of damage as the tick, which is very important. And not only that, but since it's the explosion damage, that means your area damage is going to go up even further. Let's take a look at this. Let's put in the minions.
So be it.
We'll wait for Arthas because I'll blow it up on him. And I'll use the spheres to trigger it. Good amount of damage, 200 damage all. Now let's get Fission Bomb.
Choose a talent.
Activate. Wait for Arthas. And here you can see I practically wiped out the minion lines around him just by blowing it up early. A lot of damage. If you're looking for burst damage on a Kael'thas, that is a talent you want. Again, that is Fission Bomb. We've already talked about the ultimates. Let's go to 13. We have the standard spell shield. A lot of characters get things like this. This reduces the ability damage you take by 50% for 2 seconds when you've been targeted by an ability. Can only trigger once every 30 seconds. Pretty standard. A good survivability thing. If you find yourself against other burst characters, again, maybe like a Nova or something like that, that can be quite useful. The thing about it, though, is it only triggers after an ability hits. I do believe it counts the ability that hits and triggers it. So you can potentially reduce the damage of maybe another Kael'thas' Pyroblast if he comes against you. So if you're having a hard time surviving against burst mage-type enemies, then Spell Shield is definitely a worthwhile choice. Thing is, there's some really nice other choices here, too. Let's look at the one that's not so nice, though. This is Flamethrower. This is personal preference for me. I don't like it. But this is the cast range of Flame Strike goes up by 50%. So let's take a look at what the initial Flame Strike is. Here's the Q, and you can see it goes out here to this bush. We increase the range by 50%, and what we get is it goes out to here. It's a nice increase, but I just don't think you really need to quite go out that far. I mean, if we consider Living Bomb is really so tight in, as is your Gravity Lapse, even your Pyroblast, like this is the Pyroblast range right here, doesn't go out as far. So it's useful for hitting enemies in maybe the back of a group, but compared to the other talents, definitely not one of my personal favorites. The last two talents at level 13 will modify your Living Bomb. There's Pyromaniac. Living Bombs, every tick of Living Bomb will cause basic ability cooldowns to be reduced by 1 second. So since Living Bomb ticks for about 3 seconds, that's 3 seconds that you'll get off of any of your abilities. That's not bad. That makes Gravity Lapse be 10 seconds. That means Living Bomb is 7 seconds. And Flame Strike is 4. So that's pretty good. Of course, you have to wait for the tick, so it can be, you may not get it, it's not an immediate reduction in the cooldown, but it is over time, and so you don't have to wait terribly long. It allows you to cast more frequently. This can definitely cause you to be very mana hungry, so you might want to consider having some kind of mana talent. You may want, maybe... You may want something like Mana Addict or, maybe even Mana Tap. I don't know. I don't know about Mana Tap, but you probably might want a little something for that because it's going to reduce the cooldowns. This is a very good choice. I personally prefer Chain Bomb, but this one is very useful for getting your abilities out quickly. And again, if you're kind of playing a more supporty, going for stuns, that's very helpful because you can reduce the cooldown of Gravity Lapse with other talents as well, and they'll synergize. So you can get the cooldown reduced per enemy hit, combine that with ticks of Living Bomb. So let's say that's 3 times, right? 3, 4, 6, 79. So that's a 4 seconds on this, plus Living Bomb, which reduces by 3. That means you're getting Gravity Lapse again in another second. So very good synergy there for cooldowns. But my favorite has to be Chain Bomb. This causes Living Bomb's explosion to apply Living Bomb to every enemy it hits. That is a massive amount of damage. So you put a Living Bomb down, and then boom, all of a sudden everybody's got Living Bomb. You put that down in a team fight, and then all the enemy heroes all of a sudden have Living Bomb, and then they're about to blow up and do additional damage to their allies again. And then you combine that with something like Fission Bomb to increase its damage. This is why I say Kael'thas has amazing AoE burst potential.
Choose a talent.
And you can trigger it early by using your Verdant Spheres. Let me do this again. And I'm going to try that now. I'm going to put it here, and then I'm going to blow it up, and you can see the bomb spread to that right there, spread to the gate. Now it only spreads once. So the Living Bombs that are spread by Living Bomb don't spread again. So
Very good.
as you can see there, it didn't do it. So clear cooldowns. So it caused them to blow up. And I'm actually doing so much damage now to Arthas that it's to the minions that they're just dying. They don't even spread it. So I'll wait for Arthas again. There it is. You can see boom, and it just did a bunch of damage to Arthas. And you can see that the explosion does spread it back to the original target. So let's do that one more time so we can just confirm that. I will actually use my Flame Strike to clear the minions. And then we'll put it on Arthas to make sure that it blows up again.
By fire be purged.
Alright, so Living Bomb. We'll just wait for it. Okay, no, it doesn't put it on the original target. I'm sorry. What happened was I blew it up twice. So no, it doesn't put it on the original target, but it puts on all targets around him, which is already pretty nice because then you're doing damage to the target, burst damage from the explosion, and especially if you trigger the explosion early to spread the bomb. And the thing is, they will explode again. So if you trigger the explosion early... So there I'm triggering the explosion early, and then he's going to blow up again, and then you can see it spreads again. So the initial spread only happens once. If you make them blow up and it spreads those living bombs, the additional living bombs can't spread again. But if you trigger your Verdant Spheres and make them explode early on your own, it will spread again. So you trigger your living bomb, trigger the explosion, the living bomb spreads, everything blows up, then the initial living bomb blows up again and spreads it even further. So you're looking at double explosions in a big group, and once again, that spells AoE death. It's absolutely fantastic, and definitely one of my favorite combos with Kael'thas.
My pleasure.
Now you can combine this further. You can get Ignite at level 16. This is Flame Strike applies living bombs to heroes. And yes, this is an actual living bomb. It's not an additional effect. It is acting as if you cast the spell. And by that I mean it will gain the benefits of Chain Bomb, meaning if you hit somebody with a Flame Strike, the living bomb will spread, and it will get the increased damage from Fission Bomb. So if you go into a fight, and you get someone, or maybe even more than one hero, with the Flame Strike to get living bombs on them, you can then, with Verdant Spheres, trigger that living bomb early twice to get additional explosions. It's very nice. Quite nice. Thing is, though, again, I've mentioned before survivability. I probably would prefer having something survivable with, like, Arcane Barrier to keep yourself alive. But you can definitely build a pure living bomb build, and if you're good at it, make it work. The beautiful thing is, you don't even have to use your Verdant Spheres for living bomb. If you Verdant Spheres in the Flame Strike and make the Flame Strike larger, and you hit an entire team in a team fight, you don't need to blow up the living bomb early with Verdant Spheres. You've already got all the explosions out there you'll need, because every hero that you inflict with living bomb will then spread living bombs to all the other heroes, so they will all double explode anyway. Very potent. Very potent. Alright, Backdraft. Living bomb explosions will slow enemies. This can be quite nice, can keep the enemy from getting away, but again, it's the explosion. So you're either going to trigger it with your Verdant Spheres to slow them initially, or you have to wait for the ticks. So it's not really something I use. I honestly think Ignite, or any of the other talents really, are better than this one, but it has its uses. So I'm not going to say it's useless, I just have a personal preference to the others. So you have a 40% slow for 2.5 seconds. That's not bad, especially if you do the Verdant Spheres on it, because then you can have them slow for 2.5 seconds, pop another bomb on them, and then they'll be slow again by the time that one wears off. So you can really slow an enemy down quite a bit with that. The final ability here at 16 is Gravity Throw. This increases the stun duration of Gravity Lapse. It goes up by 33%, which I believe takes it to 2 seconds. Right now it's 1.5 seconds. I believe that'll take it up to 2. Yeah, it goes up to 2. So that's exactly what that is. The additional effect, though, is that it causes it to instantly destroy minions. And that's not something I really think is super great. I was hoping that if it destroyed the minions and still continued to go through them, that would be awesome, because it would be great lane clear. But it does count each enemy hit towards the maximum targets. So if I use it here and I hit E, you'll see it goes to the third one, and then it stops. So let's toggle the minions again, and this time I won't use the spheres. I'll just throw it at the line, and you'll see it stops right at the first one hit. Quite honestly, that's a very expensive way to kill a minion, which is why I don't really care for it. You're looking at 85 mana compared to 50 or 70 on something that you're going to use the stun. I mean, it's great if you're worried about an enemy minion, or I haven't done enough testing on it to know how it synergizes with against enemies like, say, Zagara. It will probably kill her summons right away. I don't think it works against mercenaries in that way. It says minions, so it probably will work on summon minions of some of the characters. So I can see some use for it there, but since I haven't had enough testing on it to know for sure, I can't really recommend it. All the others are really much better. Arcane Berry is a wonderful survivability talent, and Ignite is great for spreading damage, and even Backdraft can be good if you're trying to stop the enemy from getting away. So let's look at level 20.
Very good.
We've already talked about the modifiers, so we've talked about Rebirth and Presence of Mind. The others are Bolt of the Storm, which is your teleport, which is really good for Kael'thas to get away quickly. That is the only other survivability talent you have. And it can be quite useful. Thing is, though, honestly, with Rebirth, doubling the length of time of the Phoenix for an area denial and the fact that you can then move it again is amazing. The only one I could possibly maybe recommend it over would be Presence of Mind, because 10 seconds reduction, very nice, but you can do without it. It does enough damage that, and it's on such a short cooldown, that having another survivability talent would be helpful. There's also Arcane Power. The choice between this and Presence of Mind is quite a difficult one, because you're looking at much more damage on this. 15% additional ability power, plus it gives you mana back should you need it. It's a good chunk of mana, too. So this is a tough call. Presence of Mind means you can cast it more often, whereas Arcane Power means you can cast it with a lot more damage. Here's the thing. It only lasts for 5 seconds, and the cast time on Pyroblast is 2 seconds. So you have to make sure you have it ready when you're about to cast, because you can possibly run out of time on your Arcane Power before it goes out. But honestly, you can use Arcane Power to just spread a whole bunch of AoE with your Living Bombs. That's quite honestly a very tough choice. It's honestly very useful. The Arcane Power, same as Overpower on Nova, it's just one of those options that if you need the burst, you can have it. But I think Kael'thas' burst with his Pyroblast is already pretty high. I would probably use Arcane Power with a Living Bomb spread. Get it out there with the Living Bomb to make it do more damage, make it spread more damage, and just have it all be affected by that additional damage. And that's just quite nice. That's probably would be my recommendation on that. So ladies and gentlemen, that's Kael'thas. That was a lot to go over, but he has definitely been one of my favorite heroes to play as so far. So without further ado, I will move on to the poke quotes for those that wish to hear those. And I thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.
I sense something elusive. My people will be avenged. I don't suffer setbacks. I revel in them. This plate mail does nothing to combat the heat. It's like an oven in here. First the Alliance has failed my people. Then the Illidari. It does not matter. My people will be avenged. I hope you realize you are not nearly important enough to be this insolent. Yes, I'd mana tap that. This is your brain. Say hello, brain. Hello. And this is your brain on Fell Magic. Any questions? Watch where you're clicking. This hair takes a lot of work. They made Lorthamar Ranger General, really? What next? Are the Blood Elves becoming part of the Horde? You can see these green orbs too? Oh, good. Thought I was starting to freak out there for a second. I can never get used to the smell of burnt hair. Ugh. All right, shut up! Will everyone just hold on for 1 second? I'm starting to crash. Much better. Blood for the Blood Elves. Sun for the Sun King. Energy. Power. My people are addicted to it. You know what? I've given this speech 1,000,000 times, so maybe you could just go look it up online.